Please give a big round of applause for Mr. Moritz Heiber.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. How is everyone doing? It's already pretty late in the day. Hope you're all doing fine. It's great. This is my first time in Belgrade. It's actually my first time in Serbia as well. Really enjoying myself. I had a wonderful time up until now. I think the conference organizer is doing an amazing job, and really thank them for that. Just let's give them a round of applause. So my first question would be, and it's a pretty obvious one, does anybody know which TV show this screen cap is from, which is in the background? Hands up if you do. Yes, nobody does. That's good. It's good in the sense that I can explain it now where it's from, and it's okay for you to not know because it's a German TV show from the 60s, so I reckon nobody will ever know outside of Germany. So this is taken from the German TV show called Raumpatrouille Orion, which is, as I said, from the 60s, and so it's Germans imagined going to space was going to be in the next century, and in the Orion's universe, Earth is united, and they're fighting space aliens and such, and they're looking like this, for example. Don't ask me what that's supposed to be like. To me, it looks like, you know, whatever these crewmen are attacking. To me, it looks like a Roomba gone, you know, haywire or whatever. But what this goes to show is that what this goes to show is that it's not always about what a TV show looks like, or how many CGI effects it has, or how elaborate the set looks like. But sometimes it's about the smaller things. And the production value of the company filming the series was extremely low, as you might have seen and you might have guessed from the pictures here. And they literally did not have any money for props or to spend on design, so they made do with what they had. And yes, those are real plastic caps, by the way, in the very top. They're supposed to represent ceiling lights. And those buttons the captain is pushing right now, those are actually pencil sharpeners, repurposed. And they also used a flat iron as a navigational computer. A lot more things to discover when you take a look at this particular TV show. I'm going to show you some more at the end. But at the same time, or at the time in the 60s, this TV show became a huge hit, and not because of the set design or whatever abysmal whatever production budget they had, but actually because they had good writing, they established a culture of their own, and they had great chemistry between the actors. And this TV show still has cult status in Germany these days. It's still being watched, it's being rerun constantly, and people are still watching it despite what this show portrays from the 60s pretty much doesn't fit our narrative from today. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because many of the subjects behind DevOps and continuous delivery sound like science fiction, and that's largely because it sounds so unattainable and unsustainable. And you never know whether it's going to be a success, much like the TV show. And those are the exact same challenges, if we talk about them, that this team behind the Orion TV show were actually facing. And as I said before, they made do with what they had, with a bold vision, and later on found themselves to be a part of a greater good, a part of the world of science fiction, and that for decades to come. And let's see how we can translate this maybe into your own very journey when it comes to Agile, DevOps, and continuous delivery. So just a short introduction. This is I'm Moritz. I've been a part of the industry for the better part of the last 20 years, and this is my real business card, by the way. I have it with me if you really want one. I call myself a DevOps Birth Assistant because I think that's what I do for my clients. I'm a consultant. I have clients that I work for, and I work to realize their vision and projects. And most of the time, these projects are cherished. They're precious to my clients, just like their own children. And as a birth assistant, which is the male version of a midwife, I'll help bring these projects into the world. The only difference is I nurture them and I support them using DevOps and continuous delivery. I started out as a bare-bones hardware engineer. So at some point in time, you might have also called me a mechanical engineer. I built data centers back in the 90s. And labels that people usually have to certain jobs don't stick to me all that well. That's why this arbitrary job description fits me more or better than anything else. As I mentioned, I wandered through the better part of the 90s building large-scale data centers and large-scale Wi-Fi deployments. Yes, Wi-Fi wasn't a thing in the 90s or 95, 96. And later on moved on to developing C and C++ and Perl and PHP and Ruby and Python. Today I'm mostly using Golang and Rust. But given my past experience, I'm usually helping clients with their efforts regarding infrastructure challenges and the cloud, whatever that is, right? And I'm emphasizing collaboration and agile working methodologies. So the company I work for is called ThoughtWorks, and we're a global organization. We're over 4,000 people worldwide, and in 14 countries, 40+ offices. And you might have heard of people like Martin Fowler, for example, and you might have heard of people like Sam Newman, who's written the book on microservices. ThoughtWorks itself has a strong focus on sustainable, business-focused agile software development and delivery. That's our main key focus, and that's also what I stand for whenever I go to a client. So naturally, ThoughtWorks themselves, when we work for the company and we're going on a job, usually we're kind of a beacon when it comes to agile software development and also DevOps practices. It's part of our job to radiate our experience and our expertise, and it's the business model behind what we actually provide for our client. It's our delivery strategy, essentially. And as I explained before, most of our clients aren't exactly what you would describe as agile, or aren't exactly after DevOps. That's science fiction to them. And because 20 to 30 years ago, when their IT departments were founded in the first place, most of their IT organization started off with the usual methodologies that were at hand. And if you look back into the 80s, it's mostly waterfall, very strictly compartmentalized, very much apart than together. And these days, everybody seems to strive for something different. So these practices that I just talked about, agile cloud, agile DevOps, continuous delivery, that's the new way of doing software development these days. And the problem with that is that you can't really put a price tag on it. You can't buy DevOps, you can't buy continuous delivery, but it's actually something more fundamental that has to change within your organization in order to achieve what people call DevOps or continuous delivery. Now, I've worked as a system administrator before and also as an integrator, and I've worked as a software developer, so I'm kind of in the middle when it comes to these certain jobs. If we talk about actually having it separated, I usually strove to be in the very, very middle. And I can tell you right now that hiring, as I said, hiring a dedicated DevOps engineer doesn't make any sense. Why would you hire somebody to do something that actually has to affect your whole organization? And Agile, at the same time, also isn't something that you pay money for. So yes, you can pay money for Scrum certifications these days, and yes, you can hire an expert to tell you about Scrum or tell you about Kanban. And then again, Agile isn't necessarily equated with Scrum or Kanban. It's a method to be Agile. But Agile itself isn't something that you buy a certificate for, or isn't something that you can actually pay money for or have people come in and teach you. It's something that you have to live. I mean, Agile DevOps, I think not everybody might know what I'm talking about right now, and combining the both, exactly at the same time, the intersection, which I would call to continuous delivery, also not. So let's take a moment to reflect on what we actually mean when we talk about Agile and DevOps and continuous delivery as well. So this is what traditional software development was looking like back in the 90s and also part of the last 10 years. You had traditional software development working with very strong boundaries. You have software developers who are responsible for developing features as code, and you have the delivery or operations engineers who are actually taking that code and putting it to some use, putting it out there to customers, and then you're generating value. Now, there's a lot more fragmentation these days because usually you also have the QA department, you might also have the staging organization, which is taking your code, might also have the product department, maybe you have a separate organization even within your company, or even have different companies if you're outsourcing that effort. So there are organizations which are still doing it the way that they were doing it 20 years ago. I will not tell you about what the details are in that regard, because this is much more about moving forward than looking backward. But going back to these two sides, so software development ideally is test-driven and product-focused and uses agile methodologies. while the upside of things is more manual, careful, and very much slower than the regular software development cycle. So it's essentially, we need all these new shiny things, these new features, software development, versus we need to be available 24/7. We need to generate revenue, and every change might have an impact on our operational readiness. So the don't touch your running system paradigm comes into play here. And I don't have to tell you that these are fundamentally different concerns, and they're bound to clash sooner or later. I'm asking myself constantly how this has worked so well thus far. Apparently it hasn't, because otherwise people wouldn't be moving away from it. And I'm asking myself, how can you actually deliver anything productively? How much effort is lost in this process? And how much time and money is wasted because of it? So the alternative these days, which is being propagated, is that you're actually doing something else. And I'm not saying that DevOps is going to, relieve you from all of these perils that are bound to take place around the software delivery process. I think nothing can, essentially. It always depends on your own context, on your own environment, and on your own organizations. But DevOps can be a solution to some of the problems that you have, and that you might be seeing within your organization. It can give your existing structure a clear focus. So software delivery for products, not features, and/or operations. Focus on your product. Everything's a product. Take Amazon, for example. Amazon.com was founded way back in 2004. Amazon Web Services was founded in 2008. And their main paradigm, their main strategy was always whatever we use for our main business at a time, we give to our customers for a fee. Amazon.com runs on the same infrastructure that Amazon Web Services is giving out to customers. It's the same APIs, it's the same SLAs, it's the same structure. Amazon coined the term dog fooding for that. So essentially, what you're giving to your dog, you've eaten before, and you know it's good, right? Well, if you want to eat dog food anyway. But that's the concept behind that. Amazon basically said everything that we deliver to our customers is a product, and it has to work not only in the context of I am a web service I need to deliver to our end customers, I am a service which can deliver to anybody, internally, externally, wherever you are. DevOps makes this possible. DevOps makes it possible to act as one coherent unit with a strong business focus, and without any external dependencies if you can avoid them. Now, what does this mean in particular? So, it means collaboration across interest boundaries and across concerns with a focus on the product that's most important. It's not about everybody does everything, right? That's an illusion. It's about everybody has different interests and specialities, but everybody collaborates to focus on building said product. And while you're doing that, why don't you share your passion and experience with all of your colleagues? Maybe you get them to share your interest. Maybe you're able to achieve more on your own, and you can focus on other things as well while helping others. Sharing knowledge is important within one's team, but especially if we're talking about across team boundaries. If Team A, for example, just built an incredible product, and Team B is using a similar technology, why don't you share whatever you have achieved with Team A with Team B? Because then you can both, with an effect of synergy, actually achieve greatness, and not just one team and the other team doesn't. The second most important part of DevOps is trust. Trust, I can't put an emphasis on this enough. Trust is instrumental to everything that you do within a DevOps context, because it's absolutely vital for achieving success in the end. And trust means towards one another within a team. So you're trusting your colleague to do the right thing, or to actually solve an issue, or to be ready and capable to solve a certain bug. But it also means confidence when deploying and delivering your applications. You're trusting your software not only to run through a test harness, so your testing environment, your staging environment, but also to be delivered to production without any issues. And also later on to run in production without any major defects in the end. And it's the key to sharing your findings and sharing whatever you have achieved responsibly. You have to trust in your code. A part of this all, as I just said, if you trust something and if you actually want to deliver something and it works and you have confidence that works, it's also celebrating that effect. So celebrating one's successes. If you have a number of successful deployments, your team should be proud of that. And they should be able to celebrate. And moreover, they should be able to share their success with others. So not in a way, look, we're better than you, or we've done it better than anybody else, but it's actually, look how awesome that is. We've built this, and it works. Isn't that great? And that's a key thing, because otherwise the motivation is gone sooner or later. Now, one of the most important things, and that's generally within the cultural context of a company, is this shift away from a focus of tech. Whenever, there was this saying a couple of years back, like 10, 15 years back, where everybody said, every company these days needs to be a tech company. And I agreed back in the day. I said, yes, you're totally right. Everybody needs to be a tech company, but then in the days it was, in a bank wasn't a tech company because they were hardly using any tech that they knew about. Those were systems from the 70s, from the 80s. And nobody still working for the company actually knew what was going on. If somebody came to me today and told me every company needs to be a tech company, I would tell them, no, that's not true. Tech has become a commodity for me. Tech is something that you do things with, not something that is a focus. And for me, I would tell them, no, tech is not, a company doesn't have to be a tech company. A company has to be a product company. And you build that product and you achieve that product goal, those product goals by using technology the right way. And that's the most important part. It must no longer be, I want feature A, but it has to be what product I'm building. Who's my customer? Is my customer satisfied? Those need to be the overarching goals. And if your customer isn't happy, then you can think about how am I going to make him happy. It's probably going to be feature A. Maybe it's feature B. You never know. You will find out if you ask your customer. But that's the thinking pattern that you have to subscribe to, because otherwise you won't be successful at all. So, in short, if we think about how we can actually achieve this, right? Because this is an easy feat. There are a few key components that you can take a look at whenever you actually try to structure teams or try to work towards these DevOps-oriented agile goals. And it's often, to me at least, I'm often asked, how do you even build such a team, right? This is impossible. The market's already empty. I can hire nobody. What's going on? And I won't be sugarcoating this. This is a hard problem. This is definitely not something that you do overnight. It's definitely not something that you can hire for specifically. But it's also not impossible to solve if you keep just a few things in mind. And those are that you should focus on team chemistry. Every character that we have within this room, within your team, within your company, they are different. Not everybody needs to be best friends, but you yourself know the best what kind of culture you want to foster within your company, within your team. So you should hire for that. Hiring for success, which is what people tell you, doesn't necessarily mean hire the best, or hire the brightest, or hire the best and brightest. It means hire the people that work well as a team. When I was, I would say it was 20 years ago now. So when I was younger, let's say that. When I was younger, my best friend and I, we were playing basketball. We still do sometimes these days, but he's old, I'm old, I have a bad knee, whatever. And so usually we were playing at school, which means if you're a large class, like 20 people, you're going to get several teams. Now, both my friend and I were pretty good at basketball, which usually meant we were on separate teams, because if you stuck us both together on one team, we're just going to crush the others. That's not good. And I basically said, it's okay, you go with that team. You get your own team, it's going to be fine, you're going to play great, and I'm going to get my own team. So what they ended up doing, which is a little bit mischievous, but that's the way it went, was that they gave me all of the people that weren't really good at sports. Let's not talk about basketball. They weren't good at sports at all. So I had me and maybe 4 to 5 people on my team that sometimes even didn't know what a three-pointer was or how they could approach the actual basket, how to throw the ball. And we still had an impact. We still were better than some of the other teams because we rallied around each other. We actually built a connection from that point on when we were a team, and we were able to overcome some of the differences in experience and some of the differences in intellectual capacity when it comes to playing basketball just by being more of a team than others. So you're compensating for deficiencies or lesser ability within your team if you hire characters within a team or within a company context that actually would fit well together. Second thing is focusing on team composition. Specialists are a thing. They're common. You like Node.js, I like Golang. You like Python, well, I don't. That's okay. They're a necessity. And not everybody is set out to like the same kind of things that everybody else does, or the same set of tools or whatever you work with. Personally, I've never seen this ideal picture of a team where everybody does everything. For me, that's a utopia. It's something to thrive for still, but it's not something that I've actually seen in the wild or within the industry. But I know that teams that keep an open mind and share their experience succeed. So keep in mind to build teams with the right capabilities to drive your product. Again, product focus. They don't have to do everything, but they have to be good at talking to each other, and have to be good at teaching, and have to be good at sharing the knowledge. And last but not least, make sure the team understands what it's working for. Product engagement is the key and vital denominator for success. And that means if your engineers aren't engaged with your product vision, and if it's not clearly communicated, how will they be able to share your enthusiasm? So how are they going to build a product that your customers love? The excitement that developers feel for building software and building your product directly translates to customer happiness. So, short anecdote of when I was working with a company in Berlin who was building an e-commerce system based on Magento. I don't know if anybody of you know Magento. It's an e-commerce solution written in PHP. And I had a phone call coming in from a lady, and she said, well, I want to buy this thing, and I'm stuck at a certain point in time, and it just gives me a pop-up which says undefined. And I said, okay, let me talk you through it. And it turns out she was in the checkout process, which means this is where you actually have your basket, and you click on, okay, I want to buy this now, and then suddenly there was a pop-up which said, no, you can't, essentially. That's the worst kind of issue with an e-commerce system. If people can't buy on your platform, there's like flashing red lights everywhere. So I stayed on the phone with her for 2 hours, I think. And it turned out there were a couple of variables at play. She was using Internet Explorer 6, and we had JavaScript running, which was throwing an error just on that particular browser with the particular operating system that she had. It took me a little time to figure out what was going wrong, but I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't actually living for the success of the company. And I was motivated at the time. And that was because the founder, who I'm still friends with these days, had communicated and shared their vision with me in a way that I could transpose into my energy that I could use to help the customer directly. I think nobody of my friends who were working with me as engineers at the time would have done the same, but I was burning for that. And that's the kind of engagement that I'm looking for. I'm not saying that it's easy to actually engage people that way, but at least give it a try. Now, at this point, you might be asking yourself, okay, but we have the Agile, we have DevOps, but what's Agile DevOps? So, to me, that's one thing, and that's continuous delivery. Because you can be Agile, and you can have DevOps, but if you combine them both, what comes out of it? I think continuous delivery is the answer. It's the ability to promote a piece of code and change that to production without any interruptions or gateways. It's the pinnacle of what I would describe as an agile delivery or DevOps-oriented delivery process. This is the definition that I've taken right out of Wikipedia, and it's essentially, so it describes what continuous delivery is like, and it's essentially about delivering software faster, more efficiently, and delivering your changes to production while at the same time reducing risk and time to market. And there it is. We just heard it from Angel. Very, very important piece, time to market. So continuous delivery not only holds benefits for you as a software developer usually, but also holds a huge, huge value for the business side of things. Continuous delivery these days is largely used as an alternative to the manual software development process that we all know, and with different test stages and staging environments and production delivery and such. If we take a look at an ideal diagram of that, that's it. So I would describe it as a unification of software and infrastructure. It's of the development process behind it. This picture is a simplified view of what GoCD, a tool for continuous delivery that ThoughtWorks is actually developing, is usually structured like. So everything is thought of as in pipelines, because the idea behind delivery is you have a certain artifact. So you have a code change, you have an upstream binary change, a change request, and sooner or later, it has to end up in a place where your customers see value created by it. So that's what you would call production. Everything from moment zero, which represents the change that you have, or a change in your expectation, to a moment production, your customer is actively benefiting from your changes or from the change in expectation, can be considered a single stream of events. So what others would call a pipeline. And in this illustration here from GoCD, you have several sources of changes. So for example, which can be Git repositories, which are then shoved into several pipelines and which are dynamically spreading out later or integrated back again. And depending on the use case, they have different results. And use cases can include integrated external dependencies, so something that you have to pull in actively, or testing, or integrating with external dependencies, if you have to ask an external API, for example, within your process, or maybe even a manual gateway, so you have something which is so important that somebody has to press a button somewhere. The pipeline is just one step. GoCD calls this picture, with an emphasis, value stream map. And that's because you know exactly the value you've created for your customer, so in production, is coming from. Because you can actually retroactively trace it back to one change that you've had within one of your pipelines. Alas, if you structure your continuous delivery pipeline this way, you will most likely fail sooner or later if you don't also adopt some of the most important paradigms that are behind continuous delivery. And these are mean time to recovery versus mean time to failure, for example. Humans make mistakes. Even though now these days we have artificial intelligence and we have machine learning, most of the code is still written by humans, and hopefully will still be for quite some time. And in the usual software development process, people tend to over-optimize for mean time to failure instead of mean time to recovery. So that means there need to be 0 bugs in your code, and the system which is driving it, and the development process, and everything has to be optimized to have this assumption be true. That's insane, isn't it? I just said every human makes mistakes. Now, if we go back to Amazon Web Services, for example, Werner Vogels, which still is the CTO of Amazon Web Services these days, or even of Amazon, I think, has one quote which I find really remarkable, which is, everything fails all the time. If you're a software developer, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you're a system engineer, you definitely know what I'm talking about. Everything fails all the time. So every component that you have will fail sooner or later. That's a reality. It's not something that you can escape from. When I was working at the end of the 90s, when I needed some extra change, I worked in a call center, which was for a larger software company. It's called SAP. I don't know if you've heard of SAP. One of the largest conglomerates in the world when it comes to software. And first day of training, they put us all in a room, And the first lesson essentially was, if you're on the phone and you're answering a call and somebody tells you there's a bug, you just say, "I'm sorry, our software doesn't have any bugs." And if you find that funny, I bring you back to the initial thing that I said, which is, why are you optimizing for mean time to failure? To me, that's insanity. So what if instead of optimizing for avoiding failure, you would be embracing these very own inefficiencies? So at least until, as I said before, AI, machine learning, the machines take over, why don't we optimize for recovering from defects efficiently and effectively and fast instead? Mean time to recovery means the time it takes between the discovery of a defect and the mitigation of the impact. And that can be a new piece of code. So you actually written, a patch, which is getting delivered effectively through a pipeline, or for some of the use cases, maybe means pushing a button within your continuous delivery infrastructure and just rolling back a version that worked before. So continuous delivery is not just about mean time to recovery, but it's also about continuous acceptance. So the ability to tell that everything is going according to your expectations, accurately at that particular moment in time, and without having to rely on a single person on a team. That colleague who's on vacation again, or that system that you set up 2 weeks ago, which doesn't work anymore. And if you don't know what's going on within your system components or on your production infrastructure, or what's going on your platform as a whole, you will never be able to accurately describe how reliable your product is. So again, customer value is impaired because you don't know how good it is. You will never be able to tell. Obviously, that entails things like monitoring and user journey tests and manual testing at times, who knows? But also dashboards, being transparent about your performance. And also a distributed responsibility for emergency responses. So that's the point where people usually say, wait, distributed responsibility for emergency responses? That sounds like being woken up in the middle of the night. And I say, yes, exactly. So I'm happy to talk about it later, but I'm a huge advocate for software developers doing on-call duty. And I will explain you why, just very shortly. Because if you think about it for a moment, how well is a software developer going to prepare their system for mean time to recovery, which we just talked about, once they've got woken up a couple of times during the night? Probably better than before, right? And they probably will write better documentation as well. And if you think about it, if you get woken up during the night, and the path between I don't know what to do, sleepy eyes, and I know what to do exactly, and it's fixed right now, should be as short as possible. So having this in mind, sharing this responsibility for not just writing code and delivering it, but also for maintaining whatever infrastructure you have in the very background, is one step ahead from other teams. Now finally, at the end, another thing is what I would call consolidated releases. And this is, or will bring you the most benefit when it comes to the operational side. It's about isolated, independent rollout of components without user interaction. So you have a certain change, and it's getting delivered automatically, and you can always be sure that it's delivered in the most effective way. And this can be achieved through things like, for example, blue-green deployments. So you have an operational side, which is the green side, and you have a site which is getting the newest changes, which is being tested, and the only thing you have to do is just flip a switch, and it goes from blue to green or green to blue. And then the other side becomes the blue side, and the former blue side is the green side. So essentially, if you figure out, okay, there's something in the new code which doesn't work right, and you still have your now blue environment, you just switch back. It worked before, it'll work again. Or you do things like feature toggles, for example, which is another important tool, to make sure that the impact of your features isn't as widespread as you would have anticipated. You can also do limited testing with it. You can expose new features to a certain realm of customers, all with the power of feature toggles. In the end, it's mostly about having confidence in the delivery process without sacrificing quality at the same time. Now, I've talked a lot about this, but let's sum this up in some shorter sentences as I did before. In the end, through the methods and practices that I just described to you, you're going to get an accelerated pace within your usual agile iterations. And all of that with a clear focus and strong business goals and customer-focused value. It's a more effective and efficient use of your resources within your team, within your company, and of your resources as yourself, as a human being. You get a value-driven development production cycle, so it's not just, I want to deliver a feature, I want to deliver value to a customer. With teams taking on and sharing responsibility for achieving parts of your vision. So if you, as somebody who has a product vision, wants to realize that, then share it with your developers. And you as a developer who have their own vision maybe for a product, you can share it with your team or share it with the product people. But you can also get a way of sharing responsibility and increasing confidence when it comes to your whole delivery process. So it's not just software, it's also infrastructure. And running your code will no longer be a black box to you, or a mystery, or some part of the team does it, or some other organization even does it, but rather it will be part of your culture. And that's one of the most important things, actually, is that DevOps itself, if combined with Agile, is a shift in your company's culture. And it's much more than just buying into a new product or hiring dedicated people to do a job for you, and you have to prepare for that. So if Angel just talked about how you can actually realize this, how you can motivate people to jump onto the train, then you have to realize that this is not something that you do overnight. It's something that you probably will do for a couple of weeks, if not even months, if not even years. I personally worked at IBM for 15 years ago as a consultant. And internally, they had, at a time when I was working for them, they had 3 different change processes running at the same time, which is this avalanche effect. So you have one avalanche triggered 25 years ago because people said something has to change. All right, cool. Then 5 years later, people basically stood up and said, well, this avalanche, it's basically dwindling. It isn't actually doing anything. It's still rolling, right? But I think we have to start a new one. So they brought up a new program 5 years later, and they said, okay, this is just going to swivel out. It's going to be, not going to run any further. It's probably going to dribble out in 2 to 3 years, but we committed the resources already, so just let it run. So they had 2 programs. Again, 3 years later, they said, this isn't going great, but we've committed for 5 to 10 years with this company who's doing it for us, and we can't recover that money anymore. Might as well have them do the job. Maybe something good comes out of it. But still, we need something different. So we need a new program. And that's where I came in. Not my proudest moment. And I, together with a lot of other consultants and a lot of other internal people from IBM, we started a 3rd process, which was supposed to be running globally after, I think, a month of a period of, I think, 6 to 12 months. And we started this process, and we kept running and running. And it so happened at a time that the startup movement in Berlin, where I was living, was kind of exploding, and a lot of friends who were starting startups and were kind of asking for my help. So I told IBM, hey, I am committed for the next 3 years with your project, but there are a lot of other opportunities, and they sound very interesting. How about letting me out of my contract? It's going to be fine. You guys have it in check. You're going to be done in 2 to 3 years. And I said, okay, we're going to bring you on from time to time, check up on things. Maybe you can give us some perspective. And what did I tell you? This program is running even today. It's been running for 15 years. It's been the most success IBM has ever had at a single program. It's not because of me, because I went out after 12 months. It's because they continued to live the vision. They continued to actually revolutionize the way they're doing software development. And part of the issue why it's still running is because there are 150,000 people. You don't do that overnight. It's the same with 10, 20, 100, 500, 1,500 people. Cultural changes take a lot of time. Now, we all started this off with a premise that's everything that I talked about until now is kind of science fiction for some of us, or even for most of us. And I want to bring forth to you, as time permits, some of the industry examples that I've lived through or that I've experienced, and some of the examples or some of the companies that actually shaped their own future from what looked like science fiction to them before. Hands up, who knows what Amadeus is? It's great. It's at least a few people. It's good. So Amadeus is a company who is mostly doing organizational restructuring when it comes to flight assignments. So if you see the code up there, which is in green, this one here, this code, which is literally if anybody actually got on a plane to get here, or if you're going to get on a plane to get off here, you will find a 6-letter code on your boarding pass, or maybe on your documents. That 6-letter code is the standard, and you're going to get it either way. The thing is that in 95% of the lane bookings for flights in the world, this code is going to get assigned to you by this company. This company is literally doing the computation for almost every flight that you take each and every day. Huge undertaking. If they ever have an outage, people are grounded. If you remember, there was an outage at one of the large intersections of American flights, I think a year or 2 years back in Atlanta. Atlanta is, I think, the busiest airport in the world. They were down, I think, for 2 days. You know why? The connection to Amadeus broke. So I think I've established that they basically are a very important piece when it comes to the infrastructural challenges within the world. 195 countries they're operating in, 12,000 employees. They have 3 big data centers, one situated in the US, one in Germany, Munich, and one in Australia. And they said, the way that we're doing development these days is no longer, appropriate. We have to do it differently. And so what they did was, they were developing in mainframes in the very beginning, and had a few key reasons for actually switching away. So they wanted to do a more agile, modern development, and they wanted to be able to react to movements within the markets. And they wanted to move closer to internal customers, but also to external customers, away from the isolation that they had before. And they wanted to share knowledge more efficiently and effectively, and move away from this, from this infrastructure which was strategically located around the world. Not just one data center or 2 or 3, multitudes. So before, very limited flexibility, strong hierarchies, and very much assigned work through and through. No shared responsibility. And process management was largely ticket-driven. So, if you give me something, give me a ticket. That was the realization that they had in the beginning. And they had this migration process was a couple of steps. So as I said before, it's a long way. But right now, from 2017 on, they have very flat hierarchies. They have end-to-end thinking when it comes to their product, and a balanced, perception of what the vision of the company is like. And they have integrated concepts such as agile, continuous improvement, fail fast and recover fast. So mean time to recovery is very, 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 very short, and continuous delivery. And every team that's working at Amadeus actually has a product. They're all product-focused. That product might not be apparent for everybody who's working with them or who has one of these codes, but it's apparent to internal customers, and that's as important as anything else. One of the key things that they did when they came out of it was start small, choose the right project, prepare your teams for these projects, get your buy-in for the project, and then build an MVP. Don't have a project which runs for years. Have something that runs for months, and then present something back. Get confirmation, get feedback, and build upon your success. With that, you generate business value immediately and not just after years. And the first team who actually builds an MVP or builds the first product can then radiate and communicate whatever errors they made or whatever success they had, and then you can build upon something which is confirmed or not something that is assumed. They also had this everything as a service paradigm that I already introduced when I talked about Amazon. So everything is a service, everything has an SLA, as if everything has a documented API. They built this as if somebody else from the outside was using it, although they only had internal customers. They're flexible enough to replace certain components because everything in the infrastructure is built in a way that they can replace it immediately, even with outside work. And obviously, at the end, automation is key to everything that they do. So before, it was all manual work within their data centers, and now everything has become automated. Everything is structured in a way that it can be automated. I have a second example. I'm going to skip that because of time, but it's essentially just an example of the financial industry. What I wanted to introduce you to is this one. It's the State of DevOps report. This is the one from last year. This year is going to come out in a couple of weeks, I think. And it has a lot of different examples of a large number of customers that also ThoughtWorks introduced to this report. It's over 1,000 companies that we've interviewed, and I think over 5,000 developers that we asked. It was mainly about how do you do DevOps? What are the benefits for you? And what do you get out of it? How easy or hard was it for you to implement? And there are things like these metrics. So things like that you can deploy 200 times faster, that you have a lower time to market, that you have a lower failure rate. All these are contained within the report. Take a look at it. Maybe you get some ideas out of it. Not just what this can do for your technical side of things, but also for your business. And with that, I want to quickly jump back to the very beginning, to what I introduced you. So this infamous navigational computer of the Star Patrol Orion, of the Orion ship, this is it. This is the flat iron that they used in the TV show, actually, which they just turned and swiveled whenever the chip had to make a certain adjustment within its course. And the organization behind the production of the Orion TV show probably never hoped for the eventual success that they had, and which these days, at least in Germany, can only be described as something monumental. And although they used the simplest tools and methods that they had available at the time, they achieved an impact on an unprecedented scale. And as much as they portrayed science fiction for what everybody believed it to be at the time, our own vision of science fiction probably has become something much different today. But it doesn't mean that you cannot succeed with a good team and with solid chemistry and the right set of basic tools and methodologies and a bold product vision. And with that, I hope I've shown you today that DevOps and continuous delivery, at least, could be a part of the way that you shape your own future and turn your own science fiction into more of a reality. Thank you very much. So I have the question prepared. I want to give you the opportunity to just answer it. So what's your biggest concern that you're facing when you're trying to implement DevOps or continuous delivery practices within your company? So there's a few key things, obviously. So one of them, for example, is lacking support from management. Then the upfront investment and time and money is too high, or there are too many technology choices, and you don't have the culture for it, perhaps. Or the team can't focus on, oh, look, a squirrel. So those are a few key moments. I'll give this some time right now. So I'll tell you really quickly, because it's becoming very important. We don't have the culture for it. Culture shifts, as I described them before, obviously are something very complicated and not as easy as you might think. But the one advice that I can give you, which also applies to most of the other topics that I've seen here, most of the other topics that are on the slide, are start small. Start smaller, than you think. So don't change the system overnight, but change a very small thing within the overall construct and kind of build upon your success and try to branch out within your organization. The only thing that you will need in this, sooner or later, is going to be buy-in from somebody who is, sitting somewhere high above. Because if you don't have that, you will not be able to actually make any difference on a broader scale. And with that, I'll leave you to these answers. If you have any other questions, if you think this doesn't apply to you, or if you want to berate me for what I just told you, I'll be in the coach's corner for the next couple of minutes, and please stop by if you have any questions or if you have any concerns. And again, thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you.
Once again, a round of applause for Mr. Heiber.